All right, tonight on I Plead the First, we have, to me, an inspiring episode, and we are all going to be thunderstruck with the Thunderduck. I'll see you on the other side. I plead the first, white shirt, blue jeans. I bleed the first, American dream. All right, everybody, welcome to I Plead the First. Today I have a guest with me that I'm happy to have, and he goes by the handle of Thunderduck.
Thunderduck.
What's up, Thunderduck?
Not much, man. I am happy to be on here. We just met here a week ago, maybe.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing happening with me right now is trying to network. And so I'm glad you reached out and lended a helping hand getting me and my name out.
Yeah, man. I heard from all the videos and stuff and reading that I do about YouTube that it's good for YouTube channels that are about the same stage of development to kind of talk and see how each other's doing things. And I've already learned some stuff from you. So that's awesome, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So let's get into it, man. Let's get into this thing. First of all, tell us about yourself. Where are you from?
Well, the handle Thunderduck is literally that. It is a handle. I used to be back in the early 2000s, late 90s. Poor man's internet. I was on Citizens Man on the CB, and the vehicle I was driving at the time was a Thunderbird, and I had a blown gasket, made kind of a quacking sound. So someone gave me the handle Thunderduck. So that's just so Duck or Thunderduck has been a nickname since I was 18, I guess. I'm 41, 41, white, straight male, which makes me the most hated demographic in American society right now.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I mean, I've lived all over. I'm originally from Texas, currently live in Oklahoma, but I've lived in Colorado. I've lived in Canada. I've lived in California. I'm very much a mobile bug. Like I can't sit still, which is really fun now because now I'm in a wheelchair. That's all I can do is sit still. But I never had a job that I kept longer than about 3 to 4 years. Never had a house that I kept more than that same amount of time. I just always traveling, just go somewhere, climb a ladder. If I couldn't get any higher, jump ship, go somewhere else. And I've always loved to travel. Always been big into cruises and air flights. I've been to England, been to Mexico. Like I said, lived in Canada, been on a Bahama cruise. And then, I don't know, there's just something about new places, new sites, new things that excite me, especially going to Europe, where the majority of history comes from.
Right.
But something I used to like to do was go to graveyards and go try to find the oldest gravestone to see where it came from. In America, you obviously have kind of a set amount or a set year. You're not going to go back any further than the late 1700s if you're lucky, and that's going to be on the East Coast. But I was at Warwick Castle in England, and King's College that year that I went, they were celebrating their 800th year as a college, and I went to Warwick Castle, and they had a gravestones there from old dukes or whatever that were legitimately 900 years old, broken, chipped off, and weathered and stuff. But it was just like, it's just really interesting to get into the depths and cracks of history and what the true stories are behind the stories that you're told or you're read about or you get taught in school.
Yeah, it sounds like we share a passion for history. I'm well traveled as well, and I've always had that sense of adventure, which that seems like what drives you to travel. So I've been a lot of cool places. I don't know if you've ever been to Cyprus, but Cyprus is full of history, just south of Turkey in the Mediterranean. And there's this really cool place. They call it the Tomb of Kings. They're not actual kings. They're nobility, but they're really, really old tombs, and you can catacombs, and you can go down in tunnels, and you feel like you're freaking Indiana Jones for a day when you're down there. It's really cool, man. Really cool.
Yeah. When I went to Europe, I went there as a engagement thing. Me and my now ex-wife, we had known each other since high school, and we met together during marching band. And the year we met, they were doing Phantom of the Opera, so that was always kind of our thing. London's greatest love story is the tagline when you go to see the play there. So we went to England and stayed there for a week, and the cost of getting there was expensive. But what I didn't realize is that's just the America to Europe cost. Once you're there, it was like $75 to catch a plane to Rome from London. It was $45 to take the train under the English Sound to get to Paris. And we didn't plan for that. We had all of our places already kind of booked to where we were going to go. But hindsight 2020, I would have had a completely different vacation planned out if I knew how cheap it was to actually get around once you're there.
Yeah, you can go anywhere if London is a good place to land, because everybody.
Yeah, well, it was the cheapest place to land.
Yeah, it's cheap, and everybody speaks English, and you can go anywhere in Europe for cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, man. So, what'd you like to do when you were a kid? When you were a teenager, what was your big hobbies?
Growing up South Texas, I grew up in Corpus Christi, and early on got into sports. Started with flag football when I was in like first, second, third grade. Went into Pee Wee football, Texas, tradition, and I played football up through middle school. And the summer after my 8th grade year, I had been riding motorcycles for about 2 years at that point, and had a motorcycle accident that basically threw me up in the air. And when I landed tailbone down, feet up, head up, just kind of in a V shape, and didn't know it at that time, but I had completely crushed one of my vertebrates in my lower back. And it kind of held together like a Smartie candy. It was just so much pressure was there that it didn't fall apart, even though it was shattered.
Wow.
And so that took me out of football. And then I got into marching band to get my PE credits in high school, not wanting to take PE. And, but I've always been real big into writing and poetry. Shakespeare I've liked since I was probably in like 5th grade when I first got introduced to it. So it's always been something that I've been able to read and understand and comprehend pretty quickly. Then, of course, high school came, and it was marching band. It was sneaking out at night till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning at a place called Jim's in San Antonio. It was like a Denny's, but more local. And me and several group of friends, we were writers. We all wanted to be screenwriters. And we came to this idea that we were too young to be able to write about anything with any level of experience. So we had to go get the experience in order to write it. So the constant phrase of the group was, we'll do it for the script. And we climbed water towers. We broke into public swimming pools in the middle of the night to go skinny dipping. We legitimately, we had sex in certain situations just to be able to write it, because we were that inexperienced on anything that we wanted to write about. Hell, I'm such an open book about talking about life. I will fully admit that I lost my virginity to hearing Jeff Foxworthy in the background, followed by Alanis Morissette, Jagged Little Pill, that played back to back in my little 5 CD shuffler.
Sounds like you're a super creative person. It sounds like an Americana 80s film, man.
Well, and that's kind of what we were going for, is like,
graffiti, American graffiti.
I was born in 1980. So I really got into music late 80s. So I was really big into hair bands, Poison. Which one would that have been? Flesh and Blood, I think, came out like 90. I think that was the first CD I ever bought. But before that, my dad had me into Buddy Holly and Elvis and Jimi Hendrix and all the classical rock stuff. And I wanted to be a musician, so I bought a guitar, and I don't know. It was just, I had so many different creative things I wanted to do. I was a pretty decent sketch artist. I couldn't color anything to save my life. Once I added color, I completely lost depth or 3D perception of the shading that I had done. I just destroyed anything if I added color to it. Everything had to be black and white. but then I self-taught myself to play the guitar. Because I kind of run my channel with anonymity, not trying to give out my real name. Unfortunately, I can't get too far into this, but I did write and publish a novel.
Wow.
That was a vampire fantasy novel.
Awesome.
And through that had poetry that started every chapter. And this might give everyone clues if they start watching this to go figure out who I am. But every chapter started off with a poem written from the view of the main character. Now, the main character this is how nerdy I was at the time. The main character was spawned after my playing Masquerade, Vampire the Masquerade, the live action role playing thing, where I actually had, bleach blonde hair and things that went on after the sun went down. I carried the Book of Nod with me, which was part of the source material for the game. This went all the way into college and through a wife. So it's just, there's some stuff you got to put up with me, or put up to be with me. And the other thing too is wrestling. I've been a pro wrestling fan going back to about 93 or so. But from 96 till about 2010, I didn't miss a single pay-per-view. And then I kind of missed a few here and there, kind of lost interest because, favorite wrestlers were retiring and I wasn't paying attention to some of the newer ones. So then I tried to get back into it here a few years ago, and now COVID happened and all the fans went away. So it's awkward to watch it right now. With now WWE has TV screens that are around the ring, so people can log in, kind of like we're doing now, and zoom in so that their face shows up as if they're a fan in the stands. So it's weird. Luckily, this weekend is WrestleMania. No, I'm not getting paid to say that, but this weekend is WrestleMania, and it'll be the first live wrestling event since March 10th, I think, of something of last year.
Talking about wrestling, are you familiar with Pat McAfee?
No, I've never seen.
So Pat McAfee was a really, really, really good professional punter in the NFL for the Colts for a long time. Pro Bowl guy, all pro guy. But he's like a super creative dude too. And he's done tons of other stuff. And he currently runs a super popular YouTube show. And also streams on like satellite radio. He got into it. He's a huge wrestling fan, and he got into it with one of the wrestlers and ended up like having a wrestling beef and like being on one of the shows and everything. It was pretty crazy. Yeah, man, it was pretty crazy. That's why I asked you if you know who he was.
No, I mean, I know WWE, they do a lot of Twitter feuds and stuff, and some of it's what they call a work, and then some of it's a shoot where it's real. They really do get into stuff. Because there's one right now, and I can't think of the guy's name. He's basically a has-been. He hasn't done anything huge in years, but he got into it with Randy Orton. But it started with the fact that he said something about wrestling being fake, and he was Bad Bunny, who's now all of a sudden a wrestler, a Grammy award-winning Latin artist, now is doing a WrestleMania thing. But whoever it was I guess feeling some kind of way about Bad Bunny being in there and said, yeah, this is just proof that wrestling is fake. And that just made the whole locker room start chewing this guy out. And I wish I could think of his name. It's someone who you would probably know, but I'm not that much into rap.
So,
good.
No, Pat McAfee. Are you familiar with NXT? I guess that's like kind of the minor leagues for WWE.
Yeah, I watched it religiously when it was just on the network, and then when it went to its own TV show, I kind of stopped watching, because when you have the network, Raw, SmackDown, NXT, they're all about 3 or 4 weeks behind what's happening live to make sure that you watch the live shows and not use this as like your own DVR.
Right.
So because of that, NXT was no longer that week I could watch on the thing. And for one reason or another, I just never tuned in to watch it live on Wednesdays. So I never got into watching it back 4 weeks late. So there's a lot of wrestlers right now in NXT. They're having a pay-per-view tonight, tomorrow night. kind of their own WrestleMania. And I'm doing this instead of watching it because I have no idea who half these people are.
Yeah, I don't know any of the NXT dudes really. I know the one guy, Adam Cole, I think is.
Yeah, you got Undisputed Era. You got those guys, and they just broke up with the last pay-per-view. And then you got Finn Balor, who they pushed over there to give NXT some TV ratings by putting a main star on NXT. But then NXT is still the minor leagues where people get called up from. So like Rhea Ripley just made it onto Raw, and she's just the most badass female aggressive wrestler I've seen in a long time when it just comes to this put in a boot through your face type of, as JR would say, slobber knocker. But the whole women's revolution that's happened since 2014, 15, that has been amazing. And, you go back 15 years or so, and you had like Trish Stratus and Lita having amazing matches, but the rest of the card was 2 or 3 minute bra and panty matches. And so if you never really gave the women a good chance to just get out there and really, draw some blood on occasion just because of how fierce they're getting. But then you got Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, Bayley, and all these people that came up. And when they were at NXT, they were pulling off Iron Man matches and cage matches and just tearing the house down, main eventing their NXT shows. And so now, it used to be that the women's match on any given pay-per-view was, that was the bathroom break. Go do that real quick and then come back and watch. You might catch the end of it or something. But now I'll gladly pass up, a tag team men's match in some cases, depending on who the champions are, to make sure I get to see Charlotte Flair wrestle or Sasha Banks or whoever the women's team on that particular event is.
Yeah, man. So Adam Cole, I guess the story is with Pat McAfee is he was on Pat McAfee's YouTube show, and Pat McAfee's kind of a smart ass. Mm. He's, in my opinion, he's not a typical kicker, but he's definitely a typical football player. Like he's going to go at you and push your buttons a little bit and see like how far he can push you. And Adam Cole threw a fit and like broke a microphone and pushed a dude. And they were arguing, and there's a big argument right now on the internet whether the entire Adam Cole, Pat McAfee beef was a work or a shoot, right? And a lot of people are saying no, that was real. Like they took advantage of it and made some money off of it with some wrestling matches, and it was pretty impressive because Pat McAfee is like a legit athlete and he did well, and people were like surprised how well he did and executed some of the wrestling stuff that's tough. It's hard.
Well, they've had, you go back in the NFL or football, not just the NFL, but football in general has had a lot of really good wrestlers come through. The Rock was a Miami Hurricane player. Goldberg played for the Atlanta Falcons.
Both defensive tackles.
Mm-hmm. And you had LT. Yeah. Back there in the Giants days, he came through. Gronk for the last couple of years. And there's some talk about Gronkowski showing up this year again. Showed up, I think it was last year or year before, and he inadvertently won what I'm still going to call the hardcore title because that's what it is. Right. If you go back to the Attitude Era, the hardcore title was afforded 24/7. Now it's called the 24/7 title, just because they're in the PG era, they don't do quote hardcore matches.
Right.
So Gronk won that. So there is a page in history when you look up the record books that Rob Gronkowski was a WWE champion. It didn't last very long, but he's in there.
Well, we did more wrestling than I expected, but let's keep on with the questions here. Obviously, you're a super creative guy. You just talked about all the different things you're into, and I find that creative people have a lot of different interests. So that doesn't surprise me. But a good segue into the next question. What motivated you to start your YouTube channel, and what are your goals? What are you trying to do?
So a quote that I've always tried to live by is, and I'm sure I'm going to paraphrase it, but be the change that you want to see in the world. I used to be very active. I used to have my own open mic poetry nights and stuff at Barnes and Noble. I used to be really big into poetry, period. But I always wanted to debate. I'd love to talk to people. And my biggest pet peeve of anything is a very strongly held, uneducated opinion. And not to get on to religion too hard, but the term cradle Catholics comes to mind when I say that. So, people who were raised in a way of thought, therefore it cannot be challenged because mom and dad couldn't be wrong. The church can't be wrong. My sociology professor couldn't be wrong. Whatever.
Oh, that's a big one right now. Sociology professor.
There's no way they're wrong. They're educated. I wasn't. They educated me. Therefore, I am now going to state what they say. And it's just this mixed in with cancel culture and socialism and just this complete hook in American politics. You can say it started with Trump, but you go back. I was a liberal, and there's another quote I like. If you're not a liberal in your 20s, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative after 30, you have no brains.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because my professor, my government professor in college said that all the time. It was. Yeah,
so when I was a kid, I was, I voted. So going back to cradle Catholic or being raised where you believe, first time I voted was for Bush, and I voted for Bush in 2000. And then didn't like what he did. Voted for, I believe that was Kerry in 2004. Then I voted for Obama and his great change in 2008. And then I didn't vote at all. 2012, I didn't like either person. Right now I can't even think who ran.
It was Mitt Romney.
Romney, yeah. And then Trump came, and I really saw my vote going, okay, so if you voted for Hillary Clinton, you voted for civil war. If you voted for Trump, you voted for global war. Was how I saw it in 2016. But I went ahead and voted, and I voted for Trump. And to my surprise, he was every bit of everything he ever said he was going to be. And but what led to Trump was the 8 years of mismanagement and lies of the Obama era. And you can also say that Bush created Obama, with the weapons of mass destruction that were never found. So now you've gone
that. We could talk about that one.
So we've gone from my childhood, which I really wasn't paying attention to politics when I was in high school. But you go back to it, and everyone could pretty much have a civil debate. To 9/11 happens, and that's when I jump into politics. It was a month solid of watching the news at every break at work, at going to bed at night. Watched the second plane hit live on TV. I was flipping through channels and saw that a building was on fire and didn't realize what it was. And then it was like 30 seconds later, I watched the second one hit. So from that point forward, I've been glued to the news. And it's not just Fox News. I mean, I consider myself to be I say a conservative. I probably lean a little bit more towards libertarian because I do have some liberal views. I don't check every Republican box, but as of right now, there's not a thing about me that would ever allow me to vote Democrat right now. So going back to your question about why I created the channel is called Uncanceled History. And it goes back to that same thing, that history is being canceled. Statues are being torn down. The 1619 Project is the name of the game right now. Horrible. As far as the rewriting of history. And, you got things like YouTube that are censoring or taking down certain things. Book burnings have now been turned into Amazon Prime notices of no longer available. It's gotten to the point where the facts are so antiquated with current society that the facts don't matter, that what we tell you matters. And the more and more this happens, the more and more lost you go. Braveheart, another quote, history is written by those who hung heroes. So whoever's in power gets to say history, but it's never been that whoever's in power rewrites history, at least not in America. So
unless you're reading the novel 1984.
Right. And so, I laugh at things that got canceled. By the first video I did was on the first. There is a specific reason why the episodes I put out are in the order that they are. And it all kind of leads to my own conspiracy theory. It's not really a conspiracy theory. It's just this is the steps that happened in the past. So episode 1 is First Amendment, and that is your base right. And we like to think that it's number 1 because it's the most important, and it's not. It was the third one written, just the first 2 never got approved. So the third became the first. But when you can control language and you can control thought and you become the thought police and things like that, then you have a true hold over what can be said. But unless there's something to punish you for having those thought crimes, then there's no real enforcement of it. So that's where cancel culture comes in, which was my episode 2. So now you have a punishment. You say this wrong, you use your First Amendment wrong, you will be canceled. You can lose your job. You may lose your rights. And from there, third episode was on Second Amendment, which now you have control of thought and voice. You can punish those who are not there, but then you're going to have those dissenters, and those dissenters need to be disarmed. And so I go through the whole history of why the Second Amendment has the phrase shall not be infringed, and it is the only right anywhere in any law, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the further amendments, even states. It's the only right that says that. And the reason why is because we can legitimately vote away every other amendment. We could vote away the First Amendment. We could vote away the 10th Amendment. We could vote away our right to a speedy trial. But the reason why the Second Amendment shall not be infringed is because there will always be a government that you're voting to that still remains, that can still be tyrannical. Therefore, you still need the protection. So that's the Second Amendment episode, is explaining that with all the different taxes and stuff that they're trying to make you spend money on psych evaluations and course training and insurance for your weapons and $200 per gun that you already own to get registered onto an illegal registry. They're pricing out the bottom poor people of America. The middle class, or at least half of the middle class and the lower class, will be unable to defend themselves because they couldn't afford to pay to exercise their right. So it's no longer a right, it's a privilege. It now becomes, guns become an elitist privilege. Don't worry about it, we'll protect you, which leads into socialism. And the fourth episode is on identity politics. Yeah. And the woke blame game. So now that you've got everything set up to where you own the speech, you can punish them, they are disarmed. Now you can push in your socialism, and the only way to find dissenters now is color code everybody. They're either blue or red, right? Republican or Democrat. But it's not that simple. You might have a Hispanic LGBTQ, so that's blue, but then she's a Republican, so that's a red. And you start mixing these things up, you start to get these purplish colors. But you thin out the haystack and you can find the red needles, the white, male, Christian, straight. Well, just check all the boxes going down of what they hate and what cancel culture is trying to blame for everything. And identity politics is trying to blame for everything. So Hitler, in the span of 10 years, was not only able to rise to power, but then to be able to create an entire society that hated the Jews and blamed the Jews for all their financial problems because of what Germany did in World War I. So America's on the track right now of hating the red needle, hating everything that checks off red. So Republicans, white people, Christians, straights, and I'm very much for gay rights. That's one of my little liberal tendencies. That I think everybody is conservative, nobody wants the government wasting their money.
Nobody.
But everyone has liberal tendencies. There's something that you want. You might want money spent on the homeless, in large amounts, build them an entire neighborhood for your city, and that would be a liberal cause. I'm fine with gay rights. Now, I'm not promoting gay marriage in a church and forcing the church to accept it, but marriage, by and large, is a contract with the government, showing that you're married. So that I'm fine with. Getting on each other's insurance, I'm fine with. Getting on each other's wills, I'm fine with. But this whole identity politics, I really do think is going to lead, if not accidentally by design, that we're going to get a red hot color of people in the eyes of the woke mob. That's going to be like a bull running through the little sheet with the little guy in the middle. They're going to charge through us all. And that, if anything, might cause the Civil War. I don't think America is set up quite in a China kind of way, or Ottoman Empire way, or even Germany kind of way, to have a Holocaust, simply because we're already armed the way we are. And there's so many patriots out there. And I say patriots kind of loosely, but let's just say gun enthusiasts that are out there armed and really do believe in that slogan with a cannon, come and take it.
Yeah.
And so before there's ever going to be a Holocaust of that type of nature, there will be a civil war over the fight of the Second Amendment. Yeah,
man, you said a lot there. There's a lot to unpack.
I did. I'm so sorry. I can talk forever.
No, it's fine, man. That's what we're here for. And I don't care about duration at all, but there's a couple things I want to revisit.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to revisit is you said something about Amazon tagging books and basically saying, hey, we're not going to sell this book. And that being the equivalent of a book burning.
Yeah. Everything's gone digital.
Yeah, I agree completely, because if you, as Amazon, say that you are going to not sell a book, then you are essentially banning that book. And I know there's people that'll disagree with me on that, but they need to really, really consider it, because if Amazon comes out and says they're not going to publish my book, guess who's not going to publish it? The publisher has no interest in publishing a book that they can't sell on Amazon.
Right. Yeah. Well, Amazon themselves is not the publisher. Like with
sometimes
my book, we're all true. Like with Kindle and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's very possible. But more recently, I've seen there was the
but any private
the Josh Harley book,
Josh Hawley from Missouri. Yeah.
Yeah. He got his book pulled by the publisher because of woke considerations, and then he just went to a conservative thing and he put it out there. But then Amazon won't take it to put it out there. Dinesh D'Souza, he's got a documentary that got pulled off of Amazon. There was a good documentary about Clarence Thomas that got pulled. There was one called What Killed Michael Brown, and so the woke answer is the police. Mm-hmm. So there can't. So why is there a video? Why is there a question? That got pulled down.
Yeah,
and there's just so much of that stuff, which that is because you can't have access to it. That is the same as lighting a match and putting it out in the middle of the street for everyone to see. And it is for everyone to see, because you can still look it up and it'll just say no longer available.
Well, and I think to your point, there is kind of a group of people out there that they think of you and I as maybe alarmist and maybe a little bit worked up more than we should be. And I think their thought is they're waiting to actually see a book getting burnt in the street, and you're not going to see that. You're not going to see that.
Technology changed.
Yeah.
And I've been called an alarmist and conspiracy theorist and everything else. And like I said, everything I'm saying is my channel is all about keeping history straight. And when you look at the fact patterns of how what road America is going down, with the steps that America is taking, with canceling culture, with identity politics, disarming, in my Second Amendment video, episode 3, I went through all the different socialist nations that ended up with great tragedies. The Mao regime, that was the worst killing in the world. And the thing I read said in the century. I can't believe that it's not number one in history. There was 65 million people died across, I think it was like a 10-year period. Mm-hmm. You had Pol Pot in Cambodia killed 1.5 million in his killing fields. You had the Ottoman Empire killed off 60% of all Armenians in the genocide. Then you had Hitler. You had the Russian Revolution killed estimates somewhere between 10 and 20. You look at all this, and what do they all have in common? They're all socialist. They all got rid of the First Amendment, and they all got rid of, or they all disarmed their people prior to the execution of the dissenters. So it's not a far-fetched idea. It's not science fiction. Is it probable in America? No, I really don't think it is. Like I said, I think civil war would be more probable to happen over the Second Amendment before we ever saw a Holocaust in America. So I tell the stories that I tell not to be an alarmist, but just so you can see, besides what you're being told on mainstream media, there is a history here, and history, if forgotten, is you're doomed to repeat. So that's another reason why you can't get rid of history and you can't unwrite it, because then you have nothing to learn from. The 1619 Project, just trying to cast our forefathers and everything else as the most horrible people in the world. African slave trade began hundreds of years before Europe ever found it. And really, I believe it was Portugal that found it first. And we stopped taking in, as America, African slaves in, I think it was 1810. So everything after that was, if you want, it's horrible to say it, but we're homegrown property. Cattle is pretty much how they were referred to at the time. So we did on one level notice that, or understand it was a horrible thing to keep taking slaves from this other country. But today the slave culture is still existent in Africa. Absolutely. With the same tribes. Yes, with the exact same tribes.
And that's one of my favorite things to say all the time is, look, if you want to talk to me about slavery that was happening here all the way into the 1860s and some into the 1870s, then first you need to eliminate the slavery that's going on in modern day time. And
right.
There's literal slavery, and then there's indentured servitude that is rampant in the Middle East.
Serfdom, basically, like Old England, serfs.
Yeah,
it's still existent there.
And one of the countries I'll bring up real quick that I've been to personally is the United Arab Emirates, and also in Dubai. You see it often where they bring in people from all over Asia, and they pay them a wage, but it's a tiny little bit of wage. They put them in shacks, and they make them work in absolute horrid conditions to the point of them dying.
With no care
whatsoever.
It's just another cog in the system that broke. Just replace it.
Any modern American that traveled there and actually visually saw what those people were going through, and a lot of them were from Nepal, they would call that slavery. You can't call it anything else, really. It's disgusting.
I'm going to pause you real quick just because I'm smoking on camera, and I noticed this with myself, and I haven't said it yet on camera. So for anyone watching this and wondering why my hand is all kind of twisted up as I'm trying to smoke, and I look dumb smoking a cigarette, this is not the typical cool guy out in the high school parking lot. I have multiple sclerosis. I'm doing this interview from my power chair. It's a $40,000 chair. I almost bet you don't have a car that expensive. Paid for by the taxpayer. I mean, Medicaid paid for it. I paid $4 for it, which was my can't think of the word.
Contribution.
Yeah. Well, let's call it that. But I said earlier that I had broken my back, and for 20 years I lived with it. and it did take me out of sports and stuff. I lived with it. And then I started having walking problems in 2014, was falling and collapsing for no reason. So I went to go have it looked, had back surgery in 2015, thought it was great for about a year and a half. And then all the symptoms came back and they said, there's nothing structurally wrong with you. It has to be something neurological. So I went in for the MRI, got a spinal tap done, and was told I had MS. And then it takes a year from that point to be told what kind of MS you have. And in that year, I deteriorated very rapidly, and now I have what's called PPMS, permanent persistent multiple sclerosis. So if you know anybody with this, it's kind of rare. There's only 2.5 million people with it in the world that have MS. Wow. And then I have the rarest form of that. So I've gone in the last 4 years from being able to work full time with a cane to here in just the last year and a half, gone from being able to walk with a cane to only walking maybe about 30 feet before having walking problems, still being able to drive, to having to give up driving about 6 months ago, had to get rid of my car. And now this chair that does everything, it's got an 18-inch straight up lift. So if I need to get to a higher point in a cabinet or something, it'll pick me up. The back goes completely flat. The legs come up. It'll actually turn me upside down for traction with my back. It's an off-road model. So I've got off-road tires on it. Yay, hillbilly. And
roll cold.
And it'll go 17 miles on a flat road without having to go up hills and stuff. It'll go 17 miles on one charge. So this thing's pretty badass. But all of that to say, sorry about the way I hold my cigarette. If you out there thinking of,
I think you have nothing to apologize for, sir. That's it's certainly I hesitate to call it a sad story, but it is a sad story.
It's one that has. I mean, we're going to jump topics here, but it's one that initially caused me a lot of depression. Counseling that I still see, but the counseling now is not even really about depression anymore. I mean, it was just more or less become friends, and he comes to the house. It's not over the phone or anything. He's a fan of the channel, so he likes to hear what I'm doing and likes to see that I'm staying creative as much as I can. But my left arm is completely contracted, so it's like a chicken wing. I can't pull my hand away from my chest. I can lift my elbow, but I can't pull my hand out. Then my right arm, I've got about 50% mobility in it where it doesn't straighten out all the way. I can't reach behind me or to my side because my elbow will start to bend if I start to reach out to the side. So there's a lot of things I can't do. Like I can't sleep in the bed anymore. I sleep in a lift recliner that's more comfortable than any bed I've ever had, but still I'm sleeping in a recliner. Lays down flat, legs come up. It lifts me up to almost a standing position to get out of it. And the house I live in, my dad built for me. He basically just said, I'm going to buy you a metal shop building, and we're going to turn it inside into a house, design it the way you want. So I designed it with no doors. Everything's got 4 feet wide halls or whatever to move around. In my shower is 5 foot by 5 foot. So should come the day that I have to be wheeled into a shower, that it's got the room for it. But it took a lot away from me. I'm my sketching ability, no longer able to hold a pencil really, more so than just maybe write my name, but I can't draw anymore. Typing with the computer has pretty much gone away. I can do it for a little bit before my hand goes numb. So I bought the Dragon program, no promotion. But I bought that so that I can speak out and be able to do things with the computer without having to mess around with the keyboard. Even the mouse, I have to hold basically on my stomach and just kind of move it around there for comfort, and trying to keep my arms stretched out on the desk to move it around. So my channel is the only thing I've been able to come up with the exception of singing. I love karaoke. I've done karaoke for the last 15 years. I used to do it 3 times a week in a bar. I use Star Maker, Smeel, no promotions either. But I've used both of those. and still do to record stuff. So now I'm thinking about doing a channel with that so I can go back to that and give me something else to do, to put out something that's not political, that's more entertaining based. And I can even take requests or whatever. It's always fun to have to learn a new song. And there's about 200 songs that I do know and that I do sing that I have recordings of already from prior times doing it. But the channel, I mean, that's really it. I took my Biden money. So the only thing I can call it is my Biden stimulus check. Yeah, my Biden bucks. Took that and threw it all into my studio. So I already had an office / library in my house. And I cut that in half because it's really, it's 9 foot by 12 foot. And I hung up a green screen behind me that cuts it pretty much right in half. And so the back half of it, I can't get to. I've got a caretaker that comes 3 times a week. So laundry that goes back there, she puts it out there. She pulls my laundry out, take my baths and stuff. So there's nothing back there I need direct connection to. But I bought that. I bought photography lights. I bought this awesome computer because the computer I had, the video editing stuff, didn't want to work with. So that $1,400 got spent. And I bought all American, everything I could. American computer. I think the only thing that had to be Chinese was the lamps that I bought. But that's something else. I'm always big about trying to buy American, and then you jumping subjects again, but when you think about like the automotive industry, there really isn't an American made car. It's assembled in America, but the majority of the parts are still Chinese.
Yeah.
I think the Ford Mustang was one that I had read about, and it's only 15% American out of the entire body and everything else. So it's really hard to buy American when you've got a political landscape that wants to outsource everything. And manufacturing was basically given up on back in the 90s, thinking that was not a big moneymaker for us, that we needed to even then get into solar power and stuff from Clinton. And anyway,
we paid for that when coronavirus hit, outsourcing our entire manufacturing and all that. We paid for that dearly.
There was no greater form of I told you so than the coronavirus.
Yeah.
That coming out and say that. You're probably gonna want to edit this part out. My earbuds just told me that I'm low on battery. So I might have to switch over to another ear thing here in a minute. So if you hear me, so if you stop hearing me talk, it's gonna be because they went dead. I know I keep jumping off your question. What was your last question?
Oh man, we left that question a long time ago, man. And the conversation's going great. I wouldn't worry about it too much, dude. But man, you keep putting out a lot of stuff there that we could talk about and pick apart. And I think we're probably going to have to do this more often if you're open to it. But
yeah. I know one of the things you had asked me before was what people do I listen to, YouTubers or whatnot?
Yeah. I hadn't got to that question, but that is actually the next question. Do you listen to like the Ben Shapiro's and
Ben Shapiro, Tucker Carlson's not a YouTuber really, but I mean, I do watch his show on Fox. It's probably the one that I watch most religiously. That and The Five, Greg Gutfeld's show. I'm now watching now that that's out. Hannity's kind of, I don't know. His show is just very repetitive. I don't really watch him all that much. But yeah, Ben Shapiro, Dan Bongino, David Harris Jr., Terrence Williams.
What about Jordan Peterson?
Jordan Peterson, I'm not subscribed to him or anything like that, but I know who he is.
Yeah.
But then for entertainment wise, I'm a big movie buff. So I got Cinema Sins, Film Theory, Screen Rant, Looper. There's a ton of them. Then Cultaholic Wrestling, What Culture Wrestling. I mean, there's the majority of my day is spent on YouTube. And part of it too was just to kind of learn the format whenever I was doing the show, like how do people do it? So like right now I'm working on a new intro for my show. That's that is better music and everything else to what I got currently going on.
Yeah, man. I think one thing important to say is how we met, you had alluded to it a little bit, but I started a Facebook group to kind of promote my channel, and that was the purpose of it. And it's kind of taken on its own life. I got my own little crew over there, and some of them watch the YouTube stuff and some of them don't, and that's fine. But you had joined the group, Cancel Culture Sucks, and you started posting your YouTube stuff on there, which is completely fine. And I saw you on there, and I kind of hooked you up a little bit and promoted you a little bit. And I watched your video, and one thing that really it inspired me and motivated me is that you are in a chair and that you do have all these problems going on. And instead of curling back into yourself, instead of feeling sorry for yourself and being a victim, you're finding things that you can do, and you're taking actions that you can take to find a purpose and find a mission in the world. And I know a lot of veterans in the world, especially my group of veterans, are all retiring right now. And we spent basically our entire career fighting wars. Yeah. And I know a lot of them go through depression, they go through PTSD, they go through all these psychological issues. And a lot of it stems from not having a mission anymore. And I just kind of wanted to use you as an example to say to those guys that are struggling, that are having transition issues, and, hey man, I don't know what to do with my life anymore because I don't have a purpose. Dude, find a purpose, find a mission, go do something.
That was one of the key things. Is I've been in a dark place for a couple of years now, and really just coming out of it here in the last 4 or 5 months, trying to assemble things like this and just get off my ass. And there's a thing called the disability scale, and it goes from 0 to 10. 10 is death. I'm at an 8.5, which basically means that I'm wheelchair bound. The only thing keeping me from being a 9.0 is I'm still able to transfer from one chair to another. I don't have to be bedridden. Once I'm bedridden, that's a 9.0. 9.5 is the loss of ability to talk and communicate. And when that happens, I no longer have a voice. So the only thing I could think of, the no better thing I could think of than start recording myself. How would I record myself? Why would I record myself? That became the kind of premonition for the channel. And it's like anything else. Happiness to me has always been having something to look forward to. When you have nothing to look forward to, it's impossible to be happy because you're just stuck in the moment that you're in. And I can piss and moan and complain all day long about the 4 walls that I spend in every day, unable to travel away from it other than down the road in my little scooter. You can really get lost in your own mind and stir crazy, and with nothing else there to motivate you, it just becomes a self-eating monster that you have to find help with. You have to search out and find some sort of shoulder to cry on. This would be the moment right here where, as you go through, do your editing, I would say post that 800 number for your suicide hotline.
Yeah, man.
Because that's not where I reached out, but I mean, it was getting there, and I still think about it because I know what's coming down my road with my progression. And I say the same thing every morning. I wake up, I get out of bed, I get into my chair, I go to the bathroom, whatever. Once I get through with my morning routine, if this is as bad as it gets, I know I can handle it. I'll be okay. Of course, every day is a little bit worse than the last. And one day I'm going to say that while in a bed. But as long as I say that to the point that I get there, it won't be a surprise when I do. And that's just kind of how I look at it. So every day between that point and this will be put towards the channel. I've got a 15-year-old son who's here with me. He's leaving on Friday. He's been here for the last couple of weeks. And with COVID and him being out of school, being able to do school from wherever, he comes to see me from San Antonio every other month. So he'll come up for a month, stay for a month, go home for a month, comes back and forth. And he's done that since school has been out. But that's probably going to come to an end with this next school year. Everything should be open full scale by then.
Yeah, man. That's just a courageous way to attack what you're facing. And I appreciate it, man. I know that the veterans that watch this show are going to have a connection with you. I already know that. I already know that my guys are definitely going to reach out and be like, that dude's awesome, man. So,
and my dad too, he's a Vietnam vet. He was a Marine Corps. For any Marines out there, I might lose the Army audience, but he was drafted. He was drafted to the Army and decided if he had to go, he was going to join the Marines because he liked their uniform better. so instead of doing 2 years in the draft, he signed up for 4 years and did his time, got out, and he's still a big hoorah, Semper Fi kind of guy.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I just hope that somebody takes some inspiration from you and looks at it. And
I appreciate it.
You know, shit, man, if this dude can do it, I got nothing to bitch about at all.
There's always someone worse. And when you're in your darkest hour, you don't see that. There's always going to be someone worse. And so it's not until you talk to a friend and they're talking about their life, like, oh, well, at least I'm not dealing with that. Or vice versa. You start telling your story to somebody and they see it and they're like, well, I'm not dealing with what you're dealing with. So it becomes, everything is better with communication. So tie that back into the channel with Uncanceling History, tie that into creativity, tie that into everything. As long as you can get your point across, everything's always going to be better.
Yeah, definitely, man. And something else that you said that kind of resonated. Hold on, I almost lost the thought there. Yeah, when you were talking about looking forward to what is probable for you, I think there are very few people in the world that are more in touch with their mortality than veterans.
Correct.
Yourself you may be in that group that's maybe more in touch with your mortality even than I am.
Right.
But I think those people that are in touch with their mortality have a gift to cherish every single moment. And I don't think everybody does that. And what you're doing is truly a gift. And it's kind of what I'm doing with the channel too. I don't have any disability that's got a ticking time clock on me, but I've had those thoughts of, man, if I went in a car crash tomorrow, what would my kids be left with? And this channel is kind of a part of that of, you know what, man, even if I don't get another conversation with them when they're older, hopefully YouTube's still around. They can watch me. They can dig into some of my thoughts, my deep, deep thoughts, and kind of get to know their dad on a level that they may not have got to know me as a child. I mean, even my 18-year-old, we have great conversations. He's 18. He's a very deep thinker. We have great conversations. But when he's 30, he can look back on these conversations that I'm having with you and all the other people I have on my channel and probably really even get to know me better forever.
Yeah. And that's why I want to do things that aren't just political. Like I'm even thinking about changing the name of my channel from Uncanceled History to making that its own thing and then just being Thunderduck as the channel or Thunderduck Uncanceled, which is my Facebook name, which I was stupid. Facebook made me give a last name. I couldn't just do Thunderduck and it wouldn't accept Thunderduck as the last name. So anyway, it forced me to do Thunderduck Uncanceled. So if you're looking on Facebook, Thunderduck Uncanceled, that's me. Yeah, man. With one L, not two L's.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was a great conversation, dude. I think your headset's probably going to get ready to die. So we could probably end it there. It was a good duration of a talk, but with the caveat of, I would like to continue this conversation. Hopefully someday do it on your channel. And
I think you still had a couple of questions left on the list that we were kind of talking about. Topics to talk about. So yeah, you want to turn this into its own serious. Yeah. Well, like I said, I can talk forever. It's very rare that I get adult conversations. So I have a very foul mouthed 15-year-old because I don't pull punches with him.
Why should you?
No.
Why should you? So yeah, man, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up there, but I really appreciate having you on the show and One thing that I'm enjoying about this YouTube thing is I'm making new friends and meeting new people and learning things about myself. And it's an interesting journey. And if I never get above 200 subscribers, I really don't give a shit. It's kind of fun to do this.
Yeah, I mean, what would I be doing besides this? I would just be watching the news, pissing and moaning about how things are going versus explaining how things should be. So.
Exactly, man. So again, I appreciate you very much. If you want to plug your stuff real quick.
Yeah, I'm just getting started with the social media thing. So like I said, Facebook, look up Thunderduck Uncanceled, Uncanceled, not LL.
Channel is I'm dead.
Keep going. I can hear you. Keep going.
You can hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
So lost it. Uncanceled History is the YouTube channel, and then I'll be getting on Rumble here shortly as well.
Awesome, man. With that, I'll go ahead and sign off, and I'll send you a link, and I hope I hear from you soon.
Yes, sir. Right, bye-bye.
Everybody smoking all the greenery. Close the match 'cause they were handed down to me. But I'm still fly, I know. I'm still fly, let's go. It could all be worse, I could be a hater like you.